When a designer combines design principles and design elements to make a design visually pleasing, it's called composition. So composition is the arrangement of elements in a design. It's about how text, images, colors, and shapes are placed and organized within a space to create order, flow, and meaning. A good composition ensures the viewer's eyes move naturally across the design and understand the message clearly. So, what composition is in a nutshell is simply the combination of different design elements, the relationship between these design elements under the laws and principles that guide a design. It's what makes composition. So, for a very good design or for a design to be visually really pleasing, it must undergo the process of composition, and the components or the design elements used in a particular design should be able to have good and clear relationship between each other. There are some key aspects of composition we'll be considering. For the very first one, we have balance. Balance keep is simply just keeping the visual weight distributed. We've come across balance in the previous section where we explored balance as a key design principle to explore in making designs really, really structured. And we can see the importance of balance once again here in composition, where balance is important to keep the visual weight distributed in a particular design. Another key aspect of composition is alignment. Making alignment line up, alignment simply just means making the design elements or the design components line up very neatly. Proximity is another aspect of composition. For proximity, it's simply the grouping of related elements together. We also have another key aspect of composition called framing. Framing uses borders or shapes to contain elements. We have another aspect of composition called white space, which simply means leaving breathing room for clarity in a particular design. So the combination of each and every one of these aspects for a particular design will give a designer a very good and pleasing design. And when the design is shared with the audience, it clearly communicates a message that the designer intends to pass to the audience. So let's take a look at some real life examples of how this whole key aspect of composition comes to life. For our very first example, we can see how the composition of balance comes to life in this particular design when we consider the section that has been overlaid with the red rectangle. So the place of overlay shows that the balance over the top where we have no overlay and the balance at the bottom, they share equal balance. It means that the element that are arranged at the top in some words are kind of like equal to the element that are arranged at the bottom. The design doesn't feel off, it doesn't feel scanty, it doesn't feel that the message at the top is a little bit too much and the message at the bottom it feels less informative. One could consider a situation whereby if we were to take out this entire box that has master your finances out of this particular design, you could see how the entire design becomes unbalanced, right? So understanding balance in the design shows will actually help you as a designer become very, very good in making sure that your designs become visually pleasing. Another example of composition that we explored earlier is called alignment. And for this design, you can see how the use of alignment was built in for this particular design. Considering the section where we have the red overlay, where the entire design is aligned particularly to the left, and notice this the areas towards the right where the designs contents of the designs are actually aligned to the right. So pay attention to the alignment of the particular, pay attention to the alignment of your design as a designer will end up making sure that your design looks visually pleasing. Another example to consider under composition is proximity. And like we discussed, proximity is having related elements in the design grouped together. So it's just the idea of being able to draw a relationship between two different elements. As you can see on your screen, we have this particular section of the design where the header says gain the knowledge to make smarter financial solutions, or rather smarter financial decisions. When you look at the header and the body of the text right underneath the header, it shows that the body of the text right underneath the header has a very clear relationship to the header at the very top. We can see another application of proximity that was used in communicating the contact information of this particular design, where the links that is used for the call to action and the social media links are combined together. You can also see the use of proximity for areas that were not highlighted with the red overlay. For example, master your finances, and right underneath it, we have a body of text that says essential strategies to grow your wealth and businesses. The combination of the close relationship between these two items shows that the items are um, closely related to each other. Hence, the need to have them really close to each other and satisfies the entire key aspect of composition called proximity. Another example of another key aspect rather of composition one could consider is called framing. And as we discussed, the use of shapes to group items together. So we could have design using frames or proximity as a means to show items or design elements that are closely related to each other. For this case that has been highlighted with the red overlay, you can see that the main header of the design is grouped together using frames, right? So you can see the rectangle playing the role to combine the different elements together. Right at the bottom, you can see another use of frame to group elements together. So this is how framing works in the use of in applying it to composition to make your design visually pleasing. Another example to consider and will be our final for the key aspect of composition is called white space. Now you could understand how white space comes to life because for every single design that we've explored, notice that one thing you always notice that the elements that are used for the particular design, they are all spaced evenly. And most times, even if the distance between the different elements across each other may not be spaced evenly, for some, the element may be spaced a bit more, closely related. And you can see on the screen right now where the evenly spaced design is cut across the entire aspect of the design. The left-hand side of the design, space within this section is equal to the space at the very center, and the space at the very center is equal to the space at the very edge. So the space given across a particular design is called white space, and giving your design a room to breathe really makes your design really visually pleasing for your audience to be able to read. Another thing to consider in design is communication. When we started this entire course, we realized that design is not just a means to, it's not just the ability for one to do a very good design, something that catches your eye aesthetically, but design is also meant for communication of a message. So, in terms of design as a communication too, one could consider visual hierarchy as a means to be able to communicate the message the designer wants to share with the audience. So visual hierarchy is the arrangement of elements by importance. It guides the viewer's eyes to what matters most. It answers a simple question, which is, what should the viewer see first, second, and last? And I'll show you guys a practical example of how visual hierarchy actually comes to life. But before we go into that, we'll consider the ways to create visual hierarchy. One way to create visual hierarchy across different design elements is through size. So making elements bigger than others shows that the bigger element will attract more attention than the smaller element. Another way to create hierarchy in a design is using color and contrast. Making a particular asset or a particular element in the design brighter than the others will make the one with the brightest color to stand out more than the other. Then typography, in terms of typography, making a typography more bold than the other or making it a bit larger than the other would make would communicate more hierarchy to your audience than the ones with lesser font weight. And also positioning is another aspect of creating hierarchy in a particular design. Elements at the top are usually easily noticed than elements at the middle and elements at the bottom. Another key aspect of hierarchy is spacing. When your design has more, when a particular element has more space around it, it calls the attention of the user to pay attention to the design at the very center because of the space that is given around it. So I'm going to show you guys a practical example of how visual hierarchy is actually used in a design. Consider this design, and a quick question would be that what calls your attention first? What calls your attention next? This for the second time, and what calls your attention last? All right. So when you look at this entire design, you could notice that the first thing that calls the attention of the user is the message at the very top, Superwoman. And understand that in our previous section where we looked at some key aspects of creating visual hierarchy, we talked about positioning. You can see how the use of positioning for this particular design has been able to make the design a bit more to call the attention of the user to read the message of the design or the primary heading of the design as Superwoman. So that calls more to the user than every other thing on the design. Then the second one you consider is the image at the very center of the design before you move on to the text at the very bottom of the design. So you can see how visual hierarchy is used to communicate to the audience what the audience should see first. I would like you to take a look across other poster designs on social media, other poster designs in the mall. You can consider looking at poster designs or billboards along the road, and from there pinpoint areas where visual hierarchy was actually used to communicate ideas to you. So what's next? If you've made it to the end of this particular to this point in this course, I would like to say congratulations to you, but we're just getting started. So in our next course, rather in our next module, we'll be looking at some learning objectives, which will include identifying different color schemes and their psychological impact. We'll also be looking at how to create harmonious color palettes for specific brand personalities. We'll also be considering applying colors effectively across various designs. So our major focus for our next model will actually be colors and see how colors plays an important role in the building composition, in creating contrast in terms of design principles, and they are primarily one of the building blocks as a design element for designs. It's important for us to look into look into colors more critically in our next course, rather in our next model. So at this point, I would like each and every one of you to take your time out, explore designs around you, explore even not just designs, basically just even basically in your living room, identify what calls your attention the most when you walk into your house for the first time, identify what calls your attention the most when you're walking around the road. You can see design all around you. You can see the application of these design principles all around you. Design is in itself an inherent law or an inherent discipline in nature. And design is expressed not just in what humans create, it's also expressed in what has been created all around us. So take your time and look at, even pay attention to the flowers, pay attention to the road, even pay attention to the buildings, and notice what really calls your attention the most when you look at a particular thing, then determine the visual hierarchy that is really captured in each of the things you're paying attention to, as well as the design principles they obey, and finally, what are the design elements that have been used in a particular design. So this brings us to the end of our third module, and I would like to say once again, thank you for joining us at Cosmos Academy, and I will see you in our next module.